So hello and welcome to another video from Dazatron's Diorama Llama. So I was hoping that this would be another tutorial video for the month of July, but unfortunately that hasn't happened for one reason and another, including COVID. But I thought I would do this kind of special video as today does mark the 1 year anniversary of the channel.
Yippee!
Which I can't believe, I'm even here after kind of 12 months on. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everyone who's supported this channel, who's tuned in, whether that's just to one video or 12 of them, I just really appreciate it. For everybody who's commented, for everybody who's given ideas, for everybody who's even made contact and shown me some photographs of their own makes. I really appreciate it. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you for kind of keeping me going, as I said, supporting this channel in one way or another. And if you're new to the channel, I thought what we would do is just kind of take a bit of a look back over the past 12 months. So there might be some kind of makes in there that you haven't seen before that you might want to go and check out. And if you've been with me from the beginning, hopefully you'll enjoy looking back and just me offering a few reflections on some of the makes that I've made. And so I think it'd just be good to kind of just reflect on these 12 months and then maybe just finish with a kind of top 5 tutorials and offer my suggestions for that. So you might not agree with those top 5, but hopefully you'll put in the comments your own ideas for what you think are the top 5 makes over the past 12 months, and even better, some ideas for the future going forward, things that you'd like me to tackle. Just remember, this is a video or a channel, shall I say, for kind of beginners or kind of intermediate at the most. It's not meant to be advanced techniques, as I want everybody to be included and to feel like they can have a go really after watching these tutorials. So again, a massive thank you, and without further ado, let's take a look back at the past 12 months. So here's a quick pan over the majority of the makes that I've made this past 12 months. And it's really nice actually just seeing them all together and kind of just recognising what I've achieved. And hopefully, you can do the same as you start to make your own bases. And it is just a good idea just to reflect on that. I think another important thing to note is that I don't have space to display all of these, and I know that could put some people off in terms of kind of making bases, because I know whatever fandom you're into, space is always a massive thing. But I would encourage you just to have a kind of a feature space where you can just kind of swap out different characters and put them on a base that you've made. So I think that's always a good idea. So here's one of the earliest makes, one of the first videos that I made, making a simple riser. Majority of people need a riser to kind of elevate some kind of figures above other figures, so you can kind of fit them in on your shelves and they don't all get kind of lost in the muddle. So this was just a really simple way of just taking a block piece of styrofoam, adding a bit of detail like the kind of rock formation at the bottom there, and the kind of the metallic top. I mean, this was based on the Autobot arc from the Transformers franchise, but I think you could use this again whatever you collect really. Obviously you can change the color scheme or you can change the details on the top, but just a really simple way of making an effective base for one or more figures. And the nice thing about this as well is that you can kind of interconnect them. They can be whatever shape you want them to be. They don't have to be square or rectangle. They can be curved, and you can kind of interlock them to make a bigger base that you can kind of separate out over time. Just again with the rock formations, don't be put off by this. You've heard me say this lots and lots of times, and as you just kind of have a go, you start cutting away at the styrofoam, you start to recognize just how easy that is. It's a really forgiving subject, making rock faces, because you can pretty much do anything it doesn't matter what marks you make, what mistakes you make, it all adds to it. So really good place to start in terms of making bases. So again, this is one of my early videos. This was the kind of the futuristic or kind of alien technology base. And again, not as difficult as it looks. This was really me showcasing the different kind of shapes that you can make. So rather than go for the kind of the square kind of format, like you could see in the kind of the riser base that I showed you a moment ago, you can get quite complex or quite interesting or organic looking shapes, and I think they work really well. And it's just playing around with the foam cutter, because with the foam cutter and the electric foam cutter that is, you can get some really nice curves quite easily. It doesn't require a lot of skill to do that. And then it's just simply a case of adding details, sanding bits down, cutting away. And again, if you go back to the tutorial, you'll see all of that step by step. But this one has kind of stayed on my shelf pretty much for the whole of the 12 months. So then moving on to one of my most popular bases, which is the Castle Grayskull base from the Masters of the Universe franchise. And again, just a really simple make. This is just a block of styrofoam, as you can see from the bottom there, the bit that's unpainted. Bit of kind of carving in with the rod tool from a foam cutter. You could use one of the small files to do this if you wanted to, although that would take a bit more work, whereas the foam cutter, it does it really quickly, really easy. The only thing you have to watch with that is you don't go in too deep, because as it starts to heat up, it does kind of melt the styrofoam really quickly. And then just using actually a bit of aluminium foil scrunched up to kind of add a bit of texture to it. Really simple paint job. And again, really versatile, because you can keep just adding to these and kind of highlight your kind of favourite characters from Masters of the Universe. So yeah, really popular one there. And this was just another version of that, just showing that with different kind of size styrofoam pieces, you can kind of make different kind of heights. So again, if you are having a whole shelf of these figures, you can have some kind of taller kind of bases at the back, which kind of act like risers, and you can have some more shallow ones at the front, and it just kind of gives a more uniform look, because you're using the kind of the same kind of decoration or technique throughout there. So again, in my early videos, I made a lot of these rock formations, mainly because they're just so satisfying to make. And again, I know they're intimidating. I know lots of people have commented on how detailed some of these kind of rock formations look, which thank you for that. I appreciate it. But don't be put off by that. Again, as you build up your confidence and you start just cutting away, and this was just using a floristry knife. So this is not even buying, as I said, the electric foam cutter, which again is not expensive, as I've said before. But just using a floristry knife or a craft knife, you can make something like this quite easily. And you could put as much detail as you want into it, or as little detail as you want. So if you want a more cartoony look, you could go more simplified. If you want to go more realistic, then you can kind of just keep chipping away and adding further details. But a good place to actually start when using styrofoam, because it's just ideal for these kind of sculpts, really. And the paint job as well with these is not too difficult, just using the dry brush technique. So just a range of kind of browns or whatever colours you want to use. So then moving on, let's have a look. Yeah, this was another really easy base. I'd been wanting to use the offcuts from kind of previous tutorials that I made, because you do end up with lots of bits that you just don't use. Yeah, again, they're offcuts, aren't they? But rather than throwing them away, I've just been keeping them in a bag. and I ended up collecting quite a bit. I've still got probably a couple of bags actually, tucked away somewhere, so I can use them again. But yeah, just cutting down the offcuts into kind of thinner pieces, then into these squares, and just creating this kind of mind slate effect. Really, really easy make. Requires very little skill, and just a simple paint job using black, grey and white, and using again the dry brush technique, which I'll show you how to use if you don't know what that is. Yeah, really, really simple base. So next we have the volcanic base. This was for when I started picking up some of the Beast Wars characters. Really, again, really easy make. Just taking blocks of styrofoam and actually using the end of a paintbrush just to kind of poke holes into it, and that kind of creates this kind of volcanic rock texture. Using the kind of rod tool to kind of create the lava effect, and it's, I suppose the difficult bit with this would be the paint job. Not as difficult as it looks, but yeah, that's probably the hardest part of that make. And then moving on to snake mountain. So I really enjoyed making this one. Again, just because there's some more interesting details going on here. I like the kind of the staircase, which you see on the original toy. And then just kind of adding those kind of, I suppose, dragon teeth, I guess is what they are. That was quite tricky, just kind of shaping those, but it's just using a bit of sandpaper really. Cutting it away first to do like an initial sculpt with a floristry knife, and then just, yeah, sanding it down. But I'm quite happy with the way that one turned out. And it's quite nice having the steps so you can kind of pose your character in a more interesting kind of stance there. They're not bases, but just again, just to show you how versatile styrofoam is. These were kind of light surrounds, so it depends on what kind of lighting and kind of you've got set up really on your display cabinets. I use these kind of rechargeable LED lights, and then just, yeah, created these kind of rock formation kind of surrounds for them. Again, simple rocks, standalone rocks that you can add to other bases, so they don't all have to be kind of fixed together. And then these were my breakout pieces. I was really happy with this idea, and I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out when I started making them. So this is where you kind of carve out a section of the back of the piece, so it kind of slots around the edges of a Billy bookcase. It might work for a detail, I'm not quite sure. It tends to work better for kind of a wooden shelf. And then just obviously shaping the front of that how you wish. So I've got this kind of Transformers Arc version here, which is battle damaged. And then I've got the kind of the rock formation ones as well. But they're really good for kind of just drawing your eye into the display, and it just adds another element to it. This was also the first time I was using kind of found objects. So these were from the actual COVID tests, but I quite like the way they looked, like the details inside them. So I started to, yeah, add those to the styrofoam, and I thought they looked really effective. It's great when you can just kind of use bits and bobs that you kind of got left lying around, and that kind of moves me swiftly on to the Junkion base. This is where I'm using kind of junkers, you know, scrap toys that you've got lying around which might have a, you know, missing limb, or your kids have got hold of them and they're not looking so healthy anymore, but you can kind of, yeah, use them again to create an interesting base. And the great thing about this, it requires no kind of carving skill, hardly any technical skill at all really, apart from the paint work, which again is a really simple dry brush technique. So yeah, really happy with that one. So again, a good place to start if you're a bit cautious about where to go, or whether you can buy styrofoam and things like that. Even using a bit of wood as the main part of the base, or a bit of card, heavy duty card, and then kind of adding the I suppose the junk figures on top. Yeah, a good way to begin. I was quite happy as well with the paint technique, just using the kind of the rust effect, which is just kind of a burnt sienna and orange, pretty much. So then this was, I suppose, a little bit more advanced in the sense that I'm kind of combining some techniques here. It looks quite effective. It's a much bigger base, so you can kind of fit more than one character on there, which I do quite like bases where you can do that. I think it gives that diorama feel. This is where I was also using some other kind of objects like the bristles from a broom to kind of create these kind of grasses. And this was just a culmination of some of the techniques that I'd used earlier. But again, the nice thing about the face there, which you often see on kind of statues, really expensive statues, they often use kind of heads, but they're quite difficult to make, whereas using the Easter Island head, because it's a bit more geometric, it's a much easier place to start. And again, if you make mistakes with this, it's quite forgiving. Kind of adds just to the detail there. I was also making use of the soil technique, which you're just using again, just kind of offcuts from styrofoam. Once you start to sand it down, you get these little pieces, and just mixing that with a bit of paint, a bit of PVA, gives you a really nice effect to kind of fill in the gaps, things like that. So this leads me to the Thunder Tank base, and this was really the forerunner for the Easter Island base that I've just shown you. It uses many of the same techniques that I used there. Again, it's a much more substantial base. It's quite kind of an eye catcher. Using the kind of rock formation techniques, as you can see around the bottom of the base itself and the boulders, and then more of the kind of the shaping techniques that I used earlier on in kind of the alien technology base there to kind of create the Thunder Tank paw. Again, mixture of kind of paint techniques, using kind of the metallic paints to give that kind of nice finish to the Thunder Tank itself, and then the dry brush techniques again on the kind of the boulders. It's also nice to be able to use some of the items that you get from some of your kind of collectibles. Some of the high-end collectibles come with kind of extra accessories, so it's nice to be able to use that as well. This was actually a bit trickier than what I thought it would be, and there's some easier elements, but the bottom part of the base, which is a bit more sculptural, was a bit more tricky. So this is Hordak's base. I'm really pleased with the result. And actually I've used this as well for the Super 7 Mumra figure. It works quite well for that. But I think I will make another more kind of Egyptian kind of tomb version of this for him a bit later on in the year. The back part there, the kind of the wings, they were actually the easier bit, because that's just using the electric foam cutter to cut out the curves. So that actually wasn't too tricky. It's the little details at the bottom which were a bit more difficult. But yeah, it looks really good. Simple paint job as well. Pretty much just kind of a grey or metallic paint finish all over, and then just kind of aging it a little bit or distressing it a bit with some kind of darker colours. And then this one, I suppose this was a bit more unusual compared to my other makes. So I was just kind of experimenting. But I was looking for some ideas, watching Transformers the movie. And there's this one scene where you've got this kind of futuristic city. And it's quite kind of organic looking, these kind of free-flowing shapes. Reminded me of the artist or the sculptor Henry Moore. who's one of my favourite artists as well. And I thought, yeah, I want to have a go at doing that. So I started, yeah, just kind of shaping the styrofoam into these kind of smoother shapes. And yeah, I was quite happy with the result of that one. And I just thought I'd show you the kind of breakouts on the actual display case, just so you can see how they look. And the same for the Autobot Arc version, just there. You can see it does make a difference. You've actually got them on your shelves. So that's 12 months of work. Thanks for joining me on this journey. So this kind of leads me up to then my top 5 makes for the year. So you might not agree with me on this, but do feel free to comment. But in 5th place is the Junkion base, or the base using found materials. So the reason why this makes my top 5 is just because, again, as I said earlier, it's just a really good place to start if you're unsure where to go in terms of making your own dioramas. I'm sure everybody has got some broken kind of figures somewhere that they can try and use in some way, particularly if they're kind of robotic. They work particularly well. Really easy paint job, but looks effective at the end of the day. So yeah, top 5. So in 4th place is my kind of futuristic or alien technology base. And the reason why I've chosen this is because I still like it. I still like to look at it. I'm still pleased with it. Some of the line work could be a little bit neater. But I'm happy with the paint effect from an aesthetic point of view. I like the curves and the shape. And again, as I said earlier, this one hasn't been taken off my display stand. A lot of the stands that I make get kind of moved around, some put into storage, but this one has always stayed there. So in 3rd place are my breakouts. I want to make more of these. Really happy with them. Look quite complicated to make, but they're really not. And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen the rock formation one as compared to the Transformers Arc, which is a little bit trickier. But because rock formations are so forgiving, actually so easy to make, I've chosen this one. But I really like the way that these frame your display or your diorama, whatever setup you've got going on. And again, you can use them for whatever you collect. Even if it's like the Black Series or, you know, Marvel. And these would work really well, and it's a good way of kind of drawing your eye into your collection. So yeah, number 3. So number 2, yeah, again, the most watched video, but it makes the number 2 just because it's so versatile. It's so easy. You can interconnect these as you start to make more of them. Really simple techniques. So anybody, whatever level you're at, whether you're a beginner or you've been making dioramas for a while, I think you can make good use of these. And by adding extra little details like the kind of the window there, you can make them look a bit more interesting or simple as you want. So that's why this makes my top 2. So drum roll please. And in 1st place, whether it's a surprise or not, I don't know. But yeah, here it is. It is the Thunder Tank base. And I think this is just the base that I'm still really happy with. Each time I walk past it, you know, it still kind of makes me smile. It was a nice kind of culmination of kind of some of the techniques and tips that I've kind of picked up over the past 12 months. And again, like I said earlier, it's rare that you can use the accessories that you actually get with the figures. They tend to kind of end up staying in the boxes. So it's nice to be able to build a base where I can put something like the Book of Omens and the spanner there from Panthro. And I'm just really pleased with the way it turned out and the different textures that you can see on there, the different paint effects. I just think it's quite eye-catching. So yeah, this is my number 1
for this year.
So there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video and just taking a look back at the last 12 months. And yeah, maybe something just caught your eye to maybe go back and have a look at the tutorial or have a go at making yourselves. Again, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And yeah, just thanks for sharing this journey with me. So tune in again soon, and I'll catch up with you in the near future. Thanks then. Bye.